John Scott here with Jonathan Acosta. Bills advancing and gearing up to face the Broncos in the divisional round Sunday afternoon at 4:30. Injuries have been where we start so often heading into games all season long. And most importantly, it's Josh Allen. You're adding a knee and a right finger to his name on the injury report along with the foot. But Allen's saying he feels good, feels better than he has for weeks. We know that's not true. It's probably some sort of gamesmanship and just him being who he is, not really ever showing it. But him even being limited at this point in the week is big for the Bills, even though we all know he was going to play anyways.
Well, exactly, because we've seen how they've managed him injury-wise at previous points in the season. There have been weeks where when he's really banged up, he's listed as a DNP on Wednesday, on Thursday. We've seen him practice for the first time even on Friday, right? So the fact that he's practicing right now, maybe indicative of his health status, but also just of the sheer importance of this game. You know, playoff game, divisional round in Denver. Can't afford to not be practicing if you're able to be out there for practice. And I think another part of it too, injury-wise, is all of the other injuries at wide receiver, right? These practice reps, even in just a walkthrough setting, is so important for Allen to get on the same page and continue to develop chemistry with basically everyone else not named Khalil Shakir.
Yeah, the latest to go down at the wide receiver position is Tyrell Shaver, suffering a torn ACL in Sunday's game. Amazingly enough, he actually came back and finished the game, played basically the entire second half on a torn ACL. Shows his toughness, but it also shows now you have Tyrell Shavers on IR, you have Josh Palmer on IR, you have Gabe Davis on IR. The numbers already thin at that position group, and the confidence was low, are even lower now here. The good news is Curtis Samuel, a full participant on Tuesday in the walkthrough, spoke with him after practice. He's going to be ready whenever they call him. We know what Curtis Samuel has been and what he hasn't been, but I would say he actually, especially in the playoffs last year, produced when on the field.
And you could say his best play of the playoffs came against these same Denver Broncos, right? You think about the play where Josh Allen hits him down the field along the right sideline. Samuel cuts back and ends up being a 50-something yard touchdown. So we've seen him, again, be able to produce in the playoffs. You just wonder, he's been out of action for so long. How much can he actually go? But the Bills are going to need him because they only have 3 healthy receivers on the active roster right now in Khalil Shakir, Brandon Cooks, and Keon Coleman. We saw how important of a piece Khalil Shakir is to this offense. You expect that to continue. Brandon Cooks certainly coming along. Maybe sort of the wild card now in all of this is Keon Coleman, right? And we asked Sean McDermott about how much are they looking at him specifically and telling him, hey, we need you to step up. And Sean McDermott said his growth is going to be important for this team down the stretch here. He also spoke about how Coleman has been growing with a better understanding of what's required as sort of a professional after they sat down and talked with him, making him the healthy scratch for the first time earlier on in the season. He's been inactive a few other games. But now the Bills have no other choice but to sort of depend on Keon Coleman to be a guy who steps up, again, just because of the injuries and the numbers at that wide receiver position.
What a poetic turn that would be. He made a catch in the Jacksonville game, a big play, one that when I asked him today, how did that maybe help build confidence? He says, I thought it was actually pretty routine. That's what I'm supposed to do. The Bills are going to need more of the what you're supposed to do from Keon Coleman moving forward, and certainly that begins Saturday afternoon. Offensively, it's going to be quite a challenge for the Bills because if you thought Jacksonville's defense was very good, Denver's is even better. They lead the league in sacks. They have a guy who has 47 quarterback hits, most in the National Football League. They got Patrick Surtain in the back, and they got all sorts of guys that are going to be problematic. It makes you wonder, how is this offense going to find answers at Mile High?
Well, you think about where they are healthy. They're healthy along the offensive line. James Cook is healthy. We saw that not be a factor against Jacksonville. Jacksonville did have the top-ranked rush defense going into that game, so you figured it was going to be tough sledding. The Broncos also have a really good run defense. It's not ranked as highly as Jacksonville, and you have to wonder if this is something where the Bills' offensive line looks at itself and says, for as well as we protected Josh against Jacksonville, they have to be able to get some push along the trenches against that really good Denver defensive front with Zach Allen, and you think about Nick Bonito coming off the edge and everything. We even heard David Edwards talk about reflect back on the game last year and talk about the respect that they had for this defense. But we saw the Bills kind of come out and give it to that Broncos defense. I think that's sort of the mentality and the effort that's going to be needed specifically from this Bills offensive line, because I do think you're not going to be able to replicate only James Cook running for 50 yards and still being able to come out with the win. They're going to need to be able to establish that run, again, to be able to at least slow down that Broncos pass rush.
On the Bills' defensive line, maybe a boost coming in that way in Ed Oliver, a limited participant dealing with the biceps and also the knee surgery that he had meniscus during his rehab. Spoke to him after practice. He's ready to go. He actually says, hey, I don't know if I'm going to play Saturday, but my body feels better than probably most of the guys who are playing at this time of the year. So the boost that he could bring, whether it's Saturday or should the Bills advance the AFC Championship game, we know the type of player we've seen from Oliver even this season in limited time.
It's interesting because it feels like for so much of this season, the injuries were on defense, and it was the offensive side of the ball that was healthy. And really, it feels like even going back to the past few playoffs, the defense has been the one that's been banged up. This year, it feels like the defense is the one getting healthy and being close to 100% on that side of the ball. You think about the secondary is playing excellent. We still need to see if whether or when Terrell Bernard might come back from that ankle injury, but you're talking about Ed Oliver coming back up front. And we've seen him in the limited action that we've seen out of Ed Oliver this year. He's been an absolute game record. Think back to that game to begin the season, punching that ball out from Derrick Henry. You think about he had a sack and a half or 2 sacks against Carolina in that game, right? So we've seen the type of impact that Ed Oliver can make on this team, something that A.J. Epinesa spoke to today when we talked with him after practice, talking about his game-changing ability. So the Bills would love to have him against Denver. And if not, if they're able to advance, certainly whoever they would play in an AFC Championship game.
Bo Nix is Denver's quarterback. Maybe he's better than he was a year ago when they met in the playoffs back then. He's still a young guy. He does not strike fear into you the way that Trevor Lawrence certainly does. I think that is maybe where the Bills can gain an advantage. Defense versus Denver's offense is confusing a young quarterback, something they do very well, and forcing him to make mistakes.
And so Bo Nix elevates his game in the fourth quarter, right? But he's been remarkably inconsistent, especially the second half of this season, right? You think about the last 2 games where they were really playing against backups in Kansas City and the Chargers, and those were not offensive performances from the Broncos that really inspired anything in you to make you say, this is what a number 1 seed in the AFC looks like. I think the Bills, the matchup for them defensively against the Broncos offense really lines up really well because it's also a Broncos team that doesn't run the ball all that well. I was looking back, they haven't had a 100-yard rusher since J.K. Dobbins was healthy and part of this lineup. Well, that works out well for the Bills because the Bills' weakness is obviously that run defense, right? And you talk about a pass defense that's playing very well. You feel like it's a Bills' pass defense that's playing very well. So again, can the way they confuse Trevor Lawrence, can they do that also against Bo Nix? And we've seen the formula for the Bills of taking care of the football on offense, creating turnovers on defense. That's something that showed in Jacksonville. Can they force Bo Nix into a couple of those 1, 2, 3 interceptions that you so often see from rookie second-year quarterbacks in the playoffs?
Pass rush is always important. Denver has 2 first-team All-Pros on their offensive line, so it's not going to be easy to get pressure and really try to speed things up for Nix or even try to cover up some of those holes against R.J. Harvey and some of the running backs on Denver as well. We will see here. One quick thought. Anything you heard from people today about altitude or playing on the road that stuck out to you?
I think the altitude is a thing, but not something that they're going to make a thing via their words to the media, what they say publicly this week. I think Denver, obviously, Mile High Stadium for a reason. The altitude is certainly a factor, but it's not like teams have not gone into Denver and played well or beaten the Broncos. We just saw the Jags team that the Bills beat. They went into the Broncos and they went to Denver and punched them in the mouth and beat them by 2 touchdowns, right? So it's certainly something that can be done, and if this Bills team can get as healthy as they can get for this weekend and have everything come together this week and practice the way they need to, I think there's no reason why they don't feel like they can go to Denver and get the win in spite of the altitude or any other adversity that this team is facing.
Yeah,
right
I think
now.
It's a convenient excuse people sometimes use, especially with where sports science is at this point in time. These guys are peak athletes who are more than prepared during the week, whether that's liquids or anything else, to be able to perform at their best at Mile High Stadium.
And Josh Allen played at Wyoming, so it's not like he's a stranger to the altitude or the Rocky Mountains or anything.
Sometimes I wonder if he plays on Mars. That's how different and good that he is. Bills and Broncos kicking things off 4:30 Saturday afternoon in Denver. We'll both be there and bring you coverage throughout the weekend. For Jonathan Acosta, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.